make statutes down the road, but that there's an effort to think through, articulate, justify, and explain exactly what constitution makers have tried to do, what exactly those rules are that they've established, and then have an entirely different set of institutional and political actors, maybe popular majorities through elections, maybe something like state legislatures through the Article 5 process, but an entirely different set of political actors then evaluate that work and either endorse it or not. Now, one thing we might think of as being attractive about that is the kind of thing that Mike Rappaport emphasizes is how high the hurdles are of getting over that, right? That's a supermajoritarian process, and maybe that's particularly attractive. And I'll just bracket at that point here, and Mike can defend it himself if he wants. But the point I want to make about ratification processes that I think is also attractive about them is not simply that they are difficult to get through and that they are supermajoritarian in that sense, but they are separate from the process of drafting, that you have to go to somebody else and get their approval for the work that you've done before the constitutional rules actually go into effect. So there's something very particular about the ways in which we tend to draft constitutional rules when we do it outside the normal political process. If we collapse those things and instead we just say, well, look, judges through the interpretive process can draft up constitutional rules too, we'll just call those that constitutional law and constitutional doctrine, and that's just the same, or we have statutes that legislatures adopt and we'll just defer to those, and that's just as good as the constitutional rules that might be drafted up through this higher lawmaking process. I think we lose something important by collapsing the constitutional process down to what is fundamentally the much more normalized political process generally of lawmaking that we're familiar with in general. And one attraction that I find in originalism is it's a way of re-emphasizing that initial process of constitution making as separate from the normal legislative process, that it emphasizes the idea that constitutional rules are not drafted by judges and legislatures. The judges and legislatures are charged with interpreting constitutional rules that come from somewhere else. And if you want to change those constitutional rules, there's a process for doing it. And again, it's a process that appeals to these kinds of specialized institutions rather than going through somewhere else. Thank you very much.
I'm sure many of you are familiar with Lord Acton's famous adage that power corrupts all and PowerPoint corrupts absolutely. And I'm hoping this works because the alternative is an interpretive dance.